Good morning once again. My name's Dhruv Behl. I'm the editor of autoX. Thank you for joining us. I know early morning starts are always tricky, although it's not that early, but thank you for being here. I'll start by just saying a few words, and then we'll go down the list of speakers, and they'll share their thoughts. After we're done, we can have a couple of question and answers before we break at the end of the session. Again, the topic that we're talking about today is enabling shared and connected mobility in India to change the way of travel. And it's no secret, of course, that there's a paradigm shift taking place in the automotive industry. And we were just discussing this in the speakers lounge a few minutes ago, where car companies are now taking out ads saying that we are no longer car manufacturers, but mobility companies and mobility solutions providers. And I was also sharing with the speakers that last week I was in Paris. There's a group of educational institutes that is outside the city of Paris, where two companies are running pilot projects. One is Renault and the other one is Transdev, which is a multinational public transport solutions company. And Renault is running their autonomous vehicles there as a pilot project. And Transdev is running a autonomous shuttle service between the train station, which is a few kilometers away from the group of institutes, the campus, and the campus. And they're running this as a pilot project, and it's going to start in a couple of months' time. And essentially, they're doing it as a way to, they're running it between midnight and 3 in the morning. So when the traditional bus service finishes, these autonomous vehicles take over, and they're doing it so that they can get some data and start the project and see how it works. Renault is running their autonomous vehicles in and around the campus, where someone can call a vehicle and have it transport them to another part of the campus. And essentially all of it is for data gathering, to see how people respond to autonomous vehicles, to see what kind of challenges they face when they start implementing projects such as this. As far as the autonomous bus that Transdev is running is concerned, they do not allow so they have a control room where they monitor the usage patterns of these vehicles, but they do not allow the vehicle to be controlled remotely. So whereas the technology exists for them to be able to do so, they have chosen not to build in that functionality because they don't want somebody to be able to hack into the vehicle and to be able to then control it remotely. So that's a call that they've taken. So more and more data security becomes a concern when you get into vehicles such as this. As far as the Renault autonomous vehicles are concerned, we were in the control room and watching them monitor the vehicles as they were doing their rounds on campus. And the one warning that always kept coming up was in regards to pedestrians, because pedestrians are inherently unpredictable. So every warning that came up on screen was because a pedestrian had done something that the car didn't necessarily expect. And the engineers on the project said that as IoT becomes more prevalent, and every pedestrian has a device which has got M2M communication with the vehicle will know that there's a pedestrian present even before its radars pick it up. So it'll give it more of a heads up, so to speak. There's a lot happening as far as technology is concerned. There's a lot happening in terms of car companies becoming mobility solutions providers and vice versa. What we'll do is I'll introduce the speakers one by one, and then if you could say a few words, and we'll take it from there. So Sidharth Balakrishna is the former head of strategy and innovation and executive director at the Essel Group. Mr. Balakrishna holds an MBA from the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta, and an economics degree from the Sri Ram College of Commerce, Delhi University. He has 13 years of experience in the sustainable energy infrastructure and social sectors, and is currently a senior director with Manthan Advisors. He has earlier been a strategy consultant with Accenture and KPMG, and a part of the commercial strategy and regulatory team at BG India and strategy team of Cairn India, respectively. He is a published author, having written 5 books with Pearson, the world's largest publishing house, and numerous journal articles. He's also a regular columnist for the Economic Times and other respected publications in the past. He has led a number of internal and internal strategic initiatives pertaining to pertaining to energy, water, and vocational training. This includes leading an initiative to establish 350 safe drinking water units in the Barmer district of Rajasthan, which is perhaps the largest such water initiative in the world, impacting over 1 million people and helping conceive and establish the state-of-the-art vocational training center called the Kent Center of Excellence. Both these projects have won a number of national and international recognition. Sidharth.
It's great to be here. So I had just a few slides which I'd like to take you through. So I head strategy and innovation currently at the Essel group, and we've been evaluating, kind of entering into the e-mobility space. I think if you can just remove this, because I don't need it. Okay, so I just wanted to take you through a few business models because we've been doing a lot of work in terms of understanding, which segments are profitable and how to kind of ensure that people who enter into this space actually make money, and particularly to understand what are the critical success factors. So if you want to get into this space, what is it that you need to do right? So one is, you can kind of be a vehicle manufacturer, and that's not a game for many players. So you have a Tesla, you have maybe Google getting into this segment. But the play for us is really in terms of swapping or charging infrastructure. Now that by itself, what we have found is that the margins are not too high. If you just kind of provide swapping services. So what we are looking at perhaps is also looking at other business streams, which is the value-added services, and that's I'll be covering a little bit more on that in subsequent slides. But that is where perhaps, if I couple this with power management and ancillary services, that is where perhaps you can make a good amount of money. And there's another segment which is battery reuse, which is perhaps something which people have not looked at enough today. But if you are swapping batteries, then what do you do with the batteries once they are past their usual life? I think that is also a question which needs to be answered, and some policies need to be made around that. And I have one or two kind of aspects which I will be covering. So who is this? Where can you differentiate yourself? Many companies are kind of interested in this space. And one thing we have looked at is a company with a renewable energy portfolio, right? They might have a slight advantage, particularly because they might be able to reuse some of the batteries, which after the usual life for storage of power. For the first time in India, we have had a grid kind of scale storage, which has been set up by AES in Delhi, 10 megawatt, storage kind of facility. So that is perhaps where, there is a play for people who are interested. Okay, so let's look at the revenue models. One thing in the US which I want to point out is that the EV charging fees is set by kilowatt hour, which is units. It is set by time or session, right? But if I look at companies like EVgo and ChargePoint, which are the largest kind of firms, they charge a membership fee in addition to the cost of charging your vehicle each time, in which you pay for the time or you pay for the units. You also have to pay an access fee. Right? Now this is pretty interesting because it also allows companies to, or let's say distribution entities, to get over the current regulations which say that, that only the DISCOM has the right to set up charging infrastructure. In India also the regulations are evolving on that front, and we have seen some progress in recent times. But if you are actually paying for access and you have a membership fee to pay, that is something which also helps you make, for the service provider to make money, because you are getting an upfront fee per month, right? So your revenue stream is kind of smoothened out. So EVgo, for example, has several membership tiers, one of which is free, and the others typically entail a monthly fee, and they all have different fee structures. I'll show you a little bit more about that. Another issue which we found is that if the charging points are limited, we didn't want people to kind of come in and plug their car in and, you know, occupy that particular charging slot for 8 to 10 hours, right? So then nobody else can use it. So you go to office, you plug it in the morning, and you take it in the evening, but then, you know, that nobody else can access that slot. So how do you ensure that people disconnect when they need to? Of course, with fast chargers also, if your car is charged in half an hour, you know, I mean, why would you want to keep it plugged in for 8 hours? So that's again something which you need to do. So one suggestion is auto disconnection, let's say after 30 minutes, particularly for fast chargers. And that's where apps kind of come in. Now, being from a media house, I mean, in Essel, media is our primary business. So we also looked at other revenue streams. So one way to make money is obviously advertising. So you use the space which you have, you know, your charging poles and all for renting out of home advertising, OOH it's called. You can also make in-app, you know, advertising revenues, right? I mean, so that's another way in which you can make money. And then the retail model in which you allow stores, you know, retail stores also to set up at your near your charging premises, right? So, I mean, so the issue is that you need to look at alternate and new revenue streams because the margins in just swapping is not kind of sufficient enough. So this is more really what our company has looked at. Now, key success factors. Very clearly, you will need location, you know, location advantage. So what we are suggesting is co-owning public charging stations. You know, let it be at highways or tourist spots or parking spaces in office complexes, you know, mall parking or in colonies. And for that, players will have to have tie-ups with a DLF, with real estate firms like a DLF, Lodha, Unitech, Imar, you know, Marathon, so on and so forth, right? I mean, that will have to be based on a revenue share model, right? So, you know, the charging service provider might want to share 20%, 30% revenues with a DLF or a real estate firm, and in turn he gets the right to set up charging infrastructure at this premises. These kind of co-owned or, you know, this kind of partnership model is going to be very essential for this segment to tie up. Similarly, you can tie up with food chains like a Domino's, you know, McDonald's, so on and so forth. And this could, if as EV penetration goes, this will also drive, you know, footfalls into the restaurant. Because you will know that I can, let's say, if I go and to Domino's, I can charge my vehicle at the same time and maybe I'll get a discount or so on and so forth, right? But partnerships are really essential for the growth of the sector. Secondly, you know, should we as a policy look at exclusivity? Now, I worked a lot in petroleum and natural gas. And in natural gas, for example, typically you have a period of exclusivity in a city. So in Delhi, for example, there is Indraprastha Gas, IGL, and it has the sole right to set up piped natural gas in Delhi. So there are companies, again in the US, there is Blink, which has you know, exclusivity in certain cities. So we feel grant of exclusivity might give an incentive for players to invest in charging infrastructure, right? I mean, it's you know, it's a trade-off. I mean, if you give exclusivity, you also need to ensure that the company is making that requisite investment. So there have to be terms and conditions. But in a developing country like India, where you do not want too much duplication, maybe exclusivity is the way forward, right? And the third one is exclusive tie-ups with commercial fleet operators. So whether it's an Uber, you know, whether it is DTC in Delhi, tourist bus services, you know, private cab companies, right? But you need to have anchor clients in each city. If you don't have, you know, anchor customers, it's very difficult to make the economics work, right? Apps are going to be very important, and apps need to tell you everything. They need to tell you how much of charge is left in your battery, you know, which is the nearest charging station, which is the time at which you can charge most cheaply, especially if you have time of day tariffs, so on and so forth. So I don't have much time, so let me just show you maybe 1 or 2 slides more in the case study. So this is what EVgo, you know, does. So as I said, you have membership tier. So, you know, you have to pay about $20 a month for the right to access the charging station, and then you pay about 20 cents per minute, right, for every charge that you do. Right? And if you don't want to pay the membership amount, So then you pay an extra $5, every time you access the charging station. So if you're not charging your car very frequently, you might want to take the $5 plus model. But if you are charging frequently, like every day, it makes sense to go for the $20, monthly membership plus maybe a certain discount on every time you charge, right? So the interesting thing is that Nissan Leaf, when they launched, they got about 2 years. They offered 2 years complimentary access, to DC fast chargers, so that So I mean, this membership fee was given as a discount by Nissan. Right, so customers, did not have to pay that fee. So potential tie-ups with OEMs, so if let's say a Maruti starts making electric vehicles, then they might have to, give certain discounts to customers like this, especially on if there are membership fees. What about Blink? As I said, they have exclusivity. And the mobile app is pretty useful. So the point I want to make here in short is that a lot of things need to be done before we ensure commercial success in the sector. One is partnerships are very important. Partnerships particularly with real estate firms, and secondly, very strong kind of development of technology and apps. So to make to give a seamless experience. And the third thing would be getting the pricing model right. So I'll stop here, but and of course wait for others to kind of make their comments, and we can discuss later. So thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thank you, Sidharth. You raise a very important point, because I think the number one thing holding back EV penetration is charging infrastructure. And just a short anecdote, a colleague of mine was recently driving a BMW i3 from Delhi to Dehradun. They're testing a couple of cars in India, and there's a website that lists all the electric charging points in the country. And he found one which was exactly midway between Delhi and Dehradun at a restaurant. And he stopped there on the Saturday, and he spent a few hours charging the car, and then he carried on to his destination. He was driving back the next day. And he stopped there again because he needed to charge to get back, and he found that the charging station was missing because nobody had ever used it, and obviously the owner of the restaurant didn't appreciate the fact that somebody came and used his electricity for free. And so the next day when he got there, the charging station was gone. So as you said, we need a lot more work to be done from a regulatory standpoint to ensure that charging stations are available and secure and running. The next speaker is Mr. Arnab Das, who's VP Global Service Line, Advanced Networking and IoT Altran. Arnab Das heads ArisNet, sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Now Altran IoT practice in its global service line for advanced networking technology and IoT organization. His key responsibilities are innovation, high-value service, business, and ecosystems. His charter includes developing future digital services across 11 industries that Altran has presence, such as automotive, aerospace, e-health, and life science manufacturing. He has 28 years of rich experience in telecommunications and high-tech software industry. Arnab has worked extensively in engineering, product development, product management, design, and rollout of managed services offerings for various verticals. Arnab has been involved in technology development and incubating emerging technology businesses for his organization for the past 15 plus years. Arnab.
Thank you, Dhruv. So very interesting presentation on electric vehicles and the infrastructure that needs to be developed regarding charging and how it can be, what are the business models. But at the back end of it, there are a lot of technological innovations that need to happen, and the good news is a lot of that is happening. Whether it is getting industrialized or commercialized that rapidly is a question mark. But just to take a few examples, like you talked about the charging infrastructure that needs to be set up. Now, one of the aspects you talked about is how do you incentivize it? What can you do with it? Now, on the other hand, think about things like digital payments, digital wallets. Think about things like security. And if you're going to set up infrastructure, which needs to be unmanned and it needs to be ease of use, which means you need to know how far do I need to go to find a charging station, and what are the services available at the charging station. Once I plug in my car in that charging station, how do I get charged for it for using that service? And how do you make all that very seamless with prevalence of digital? So that is where a lot of interesting work is happening. There is some amount of standardization work that is happening. Charging station network management. There are technologies which are being evolved so that the charging stations can talk to each other. The charging stations can announce their presence with some technologies so that whoever is passing by in a certain radius or through other means would know the location of charging stations. And one of the things about EV vehicle owners is about, what is that? Charging anxiety, which means the example that you gave, if I'm driving from Delhi to Dehradun, I'm kind of always thinking, how far can I go? Or would I run out of charge before I reach my destination? And will I find some charging stations in between? So this is where vehicle to infrastructure communication technology is becoming prevalent. There are certain countries in which these are already available, by which the car is always communicating with its environment. That environment includes not just other cars in its vicinity, but also the infrastructure. It is almost, think of it like your mobile is always communicating with the infrastructure, because when you're speaking on the mobile, there is information that is going from the mobile into the network. So these kind of technologies, which are called V2X technologies, vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle to pedestrian. So they will play a very critical role in making the experience of owning a EV convenient. On your map, as you drive by, it will give you potential routes on which you are likely to find more charging stations automatically. If you are setting your destination on your Google map, for example, for a route, it will advise you based on the level of charge and the distance you want to go. And also, here's the interesting piece, based on your personal driving behavior. How much do you accelerate, decelerate, what kind of driving patterns you have. So analysis of all this information that can be crunched in the cloud and made available through technology on your IVI, or the so-called digital cockpits of cars, on suggesting that this is what you may want to consider on your way to office or on your way to a tourist location. So we're doing some work on those. There are clearly two aspects of all this kind of technology. One is the communication infrastructure. How does the car communicate with the infrastructure? Also, what kind of data can you collect from the car and push it into the cloud, get it analyzed there, and create some insights and make it available back to the driver or the car. So those are areas which the pace at which these technologies are evolved and also made accessible to the country, because you need to use certain types of frequency bands for communication and all that, which the countries need to allow. So that is what will play a critical role in how quickly we can adapt our infrastructure to all these technologies. I mean, just yesterday there was a news announcement that in India, beyond 2025, no scooters or any sort of two-wheelers with less than 150 cc can be sold without it being an EV. So that means all less than 150 cc two-wheelers will 100% have to be EV by the year 2025 or 2023, one of these two, I forget. So now when you have these bikes, and you know in India the ownership of scooters or two-wheelers is the highest, right? So when you have 100% EV presence in this segment, what is the supporting environment? I mean, how do you use that? How do you charge it? And given the diverse nature of our country, right, both from demography as well as infrastructure, in smaller towns, cities, and villages, the users, if they have an EV bike, how do they use it? What is their user experience of that bike? So, so that needs to be thought through, and that is where ease of use and app that you talked about, EVgo app, simplified a more intuitive digital fusion between the vehicle and the data and the infrastructure needs to happen. The good news is a lot of works are happening. There are a lot of startups in this area that are innovating. A whole bunch of Ather and all those folks. Oken is another, Inverse is another. A lot of companies are investing in this. There's a lot of power of innovation once you become digital. There are a lot of things that you can do and make things simpler to adopt. So exciting times. I just want to leave an interesting case study which I came across recently about how the card, like all of us have our own personas, right? I have a Aadhaar ID and I have a PAN card and I identify myself as a citizen to the system, right? Using that, when I go to a bank or when I create a Paytm digital wallet account, I am identified and then I get that wallet and then I can do transactions on that wallet. There's a company which is working on creating digital identity for the car, which means the car will have or it could be a two-wheeler also. It can have an identity of its own, secure, unique. Now, once you do that, the car will have its own digital wallet. The car will create its own revenue stream. How? It will announce that I am available for this period to this period. These are my features. These are the distances that I am available to be used for and these periods of time. And there will be, through blockchain technology, secure contracts that the car will create a secure contract for itself. And as a user, if I want to use a car, I'm looking for a service, I can use the platform and come into an arrangement, do a contract sharing that who or what car are available nearby, all automatically without a central entity which is required to perform it. Today, for example, I use a Uber or a Shuttle or many other such services to do either carpooling or ride-hailing. This is the seeds of a decentralized, peer-to-peer network, users and vehicles talking to each other in a decentralized but still secure and maintaining a chain of trust where these transactions can happen. So there are some very interesting white papers and initiatives here, and also interestingly the startup community is starting to get funded on some of these. So check out Oken and Inverse on how blockchain and mobility are fusing each other. So who knows, 20 years from now, I don't need, or not even 20, maybe digital pace evolves very rapidly, maybe even 5 years from now. You may see a lot of decentralization of the way in which we access shared mobility today. So that's just a thought to leave and an interesting idea for us to maybe track. Thank you so much for your time, and we can do a Q&A.
Thank you, Arnab. I remember some time ago there was a gentleman from Google who was speaking at one of these conferences, and his vision of the future was that your car, because your own personal vehicle, 80 to 90% of the time just sits idle and does nothing. So it said that your autonomous vehicle will drive you to work, it'll drop you off, and then it'll go off and become an Uber and earn you money. And so instead of sitting idle, it'll actually do, while you're sitting at work, it'll go and earn its own living as well. The utopian vision of that is that it'll earn so much money that it'll be able to procure another car and run a fleet of Uber vehicles for you. And so we'll have to see how that goes. But maybe you can help us, since the next speaker is Ms. Avantika Gode, Head of Federal Affairs at Uber. Avantika heads Federal Affairs and Safety Policy for Uber in India and South Asia. She's responsible for conceptualizing, coordinating, and executing key safety partnerships and campaigns for the company. Some of the initiatives that have been led by Avantika include a national gender sensitization initiative, a road safety campaign with the Federal Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, and state-specific campaigns for reducing incidents of drunk driving. Apart from heading safety policy, Avantika also heads Federal Affairs for Uber India and South Asia. In this role, she works extensively with stakeholders within the national policy ecosystem to produce progressive regulations for mobility and innovation. Before joining Uber, Avantika was a journalist with experience at Bloomberg TV. She was legal and policy principal correspondent covering corporate affairs for the Bloomberg network. Avantika has also undertaken independent investigations on financial and economic crimes. Avantika holds a master's in public policy from National Law School of India, Bangalore, and has completed her Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Ferguson College, Pune. Avantika.
Thanks a lot for that introduction, Dhruv. I think, so when Uber was conceptualized and started, our founder, Travis Kalanick, had said that he doesn't want to see a world that looks like a traffic jam and moves like a parking lot. And I think much of that holds true for the company and the future of our cities even today. So I think, of course, EV seems to be the go word right now, and that's something that Uber is committed to doing much more on. But just taking a few steps back, and as we look at what is it that we can do in terms of decongestion and reducing pollution in our cities, I think the future there really has to be shared mobility. And when we say shared mobility, it's actually about looking at how we can put more people into fewer cars. There's data to show that one shared vehicle can reduce nearly 11 private vehicles on the road, and I think it's almost our commitment as citizens and the public to ensure that we move to a path that ensures that we get into, that more of us are using fewer private vehicles. I think when we talk about shared mobility specifically, a great point raised that most of the assets remain not utilized for most of the time. 95% of the times they sit idle. I think it's critical to look at what that impact holds, right? You're then looking at 14% of Delhi being used for parking. Do you want to see that world change? Of course, yes. The future again then looks towards multimodal transport. No specific mode of transport is ideal for every situation. How can we ensure that all our needs are met in a situation that's shared? Again, that's where Uber steps in. We are looking at not just four-wheelers, but also looking to bring two-wheelers and three-wheelers and optimize their use on the platform. I think coming back to electric mobility, four-wheelers, of course, a lot of challenges that have already been discussed. So I think Uber sees potential in bringing two-wheelers and three-wheelers where the economics really make sense for electric mobility at this stage. As and when infrastructure accommodates for better utilization of four-wheelers, electric four-wheelers, then we'll be ready to do that as well. But I think as far as Uber is concerned, shared mobility is really the way forward. It's where the future of the city really, really has to go. As somebody who lives in Delhi and travels between Delhi and Gurgaon almost every day, I can say with certainty that that the traffic needs to reduce, congestion needs to be solved for, and shared mobility is the way forward. On the last point, I think the shared mobility does come with specific requirements and asks for safety, right? It's something that's repeatedly brought up, and questions raised on whether technology can solve for that. Again, I think at Uber on the platform we found that technology is ever evolving and ever solving for safety concerns that come up. So we are looking at safety not just while you're on the trip, but before and after as well. I think as we take the panel discussion forward, we'll discuss some of the specifics on safety. But I think I'll leave it at that as far as where Uber stands on shared mobility, but happy to get everyone else's thoughts as well.
Thank you, Avantika. Uber has certainly become synonymous with shared mobility.
Very happy to hear that.
The next speaker is Ms. Bharti Maan, Director Digital Transformation at SAP, a senior business leader with 22 plus years of a proven track record, capable of operating at both the management level and also rolling up sleeves to get the job done, possesses a nice combination of business management strategy and technology acumen, P&L and revenue management, GTM and sales. She has executed multi-million-dollar digital transformation and system integration projects, built high-profile teams and delivered results through large, diverse and multi-site teams and strategic partnerships, enterprise application, ERP, SAP, eBiz, Maximo, digital transformation, analytics, cloud, AI, RPA, ML, IoT, digital twins, and intelligent enterprise. Bharti.
Thanks. Okay. Before I start to talk, how many people out here are from the business side? Can I just see a raise of hand? Okay. And anybody from the startup world? Okay. So maybe you guys can give me an answer. What is the most important thing behind a successful idea? I mean, why does an idea become a successful versus another idea that doesn't become successful? Yeah, please. Why it becomes successful?
Hi, I'm Ramnath Mandli. Every company or when we start with a startup, there is always a need creation.
Yes.
And always a need requires two things. One is the enthusiasm and the passion towards how to create that environment. And that makes drive to the success always. So these two factors really helps us, anybody, to go forward and makes them to see in another heights.
Okay. So you exactly pinned it down that the need creation, that is the most important thing about an idea. So in other words, we can say that idea should be monetizable. It should be able to make money. That is why an idea will become successful. And over the last 3 years, since I got engaged with shared mobility, this is what I figured out. That this is one idea which is highly monetizable for the companies, and this is one idea which saves a lot of money for the users and puts a lot of money back into their pockets. You don't have to buy the things, but still the unit is with you for the time that you want to use it. If we see the history, transport has always been a shared entity. You call it ships, you call it trains, you call it buses, any entity, it was always shared. But with the advent of cars, we had the units which were our owned units, on which we spent the money, and those units were ours for the time we used it. And now shared mobility is providing us the convenience of owning the units for the time that we need it, without having to pay for the idle time. Which is what we just heard, that one shared vehicle can take 11 other vehicles off from the car. Imagine, not just in terms of impacts on the society, not just in terms of impacts on the social lives of the people, but also the money that it is putting back into the pockets of the users. You don't have to waste that much of money of yours, you can put it to better use. Now, why is this happening now is the most important thing. I guess to monetize any car or to monetize any vehicle that is there, what we really need is a real-time information about the people who want to use it and the people who own it. The ownership model should be clear, the availability should be very clear, and the user's data should be very cleared. With the rise in digitization platform, with the rise in availability of the data, personal data of the users who would like to use such entities, this particular thing is happening now. Another big factor which is contributing to the rise of shared mobility is availability of my choice of vehicle, my type of vehicle. Imagine a scenario where you have people with special abilities, you know. They cannot press the pedal to accelerate, but there are special vehicles available for them. It is an empowerment in the hands of those people. Imagine a 70-plus-year-old guy who has this problem of hands shivering and shaking. He cannot drive, but that person has been used to be independent throughout their lives. They don't want to be now dependent on a driver or dependent on a cab or anything. The shared vehicle model is a blessing to them. They would just get the autonomous vehicle at their doorstep at the time when they want it. They can maintain their independence. Plus, every time you have a single vehicle, you can customize, you can make it more efficient, you can make it more convenient. If we talk about shared vehicles, these days every shared Ola, Uber, Shuttle, it comes with GPS trackers. Every single vehicle. right? It's much more safer. Similarly, when we talk about logistics as a thing, cold supply chain has been a problem for businesses in India for years. But with the shared vehicles and the shared entities like Rivigo and all coming into picture, it's much more convenient. You can also customize your containers to prevent thefts. Theft has been a big problem for the supply chain industry. But now you have smart vehicles which can prevent thefts, which are always connected. So I think the power of shared mobility, it lies in how we present them to our users, how we motivate in our users to use them, and the power of real-time data and the platforms that can make that real-time data available to you. The user data, vehicle data, availability data. That is where the power lies. And thanks to all the IoT sensor makers, all the companies that are working on creating those wonderful digital platforms, now we have those things available. I hear these things because being from SAP, we work as the back-end backbone for every platform that comes there. We have this privilege. I have this privilege to be the participant in the very first basic discussions, okay, like I asked them, oh guys, you made that architecture, what happened? Why it has not taken off? And then they talk to me and they tell me that, yeah, architecturally it was wonderful, but we didn't implement it because we didn't find any takers. It was not monetizable. My only recommendation would be always make an idea, make a digital platform which has merging of the social elements into it. It will work. Always work. And that is the most crucial thing. That's all from my side. Thanks.
Thank you, Bharti. If the other speakers don't mind, if we can just jump ahead for a moment. Mr. Zeng has a translator here, and he may need to leave before the end of the session. Mr. Junshan Zeng is Director General Development and Research Center of the State Post Bureau, China. Mr. Zeng is Director General. He obtained his master's degree in economics and has engaged in the postal industry for many years. He has worked as Director in State Post Bureau, Director of Hebei Provincial Post Administration, and Director of Shanghai Municipal Post Administration. He's published about 20 research papers on various media. Mr. Zeng.
OK， 感谢主席先生，感谢女士们、先生们。
Thank you, the chair, and thank you, other speakers over here.
我来自中国北京，中国国家邮政局工作。
I'm from the capital of China, that is Beijing, and I'm from the State Post Bureau of China.
愿意与各位分享一下中国的情况。
I want to share some of the situations that are prevalent in China these days with everyone present over here.
今天这个会议的主题是智慧城市，这在中国也是一个热门的话题。中国的北京、上海、广州、深圳、杭州等一线、二线城市都在快速地进入智慧城市的行业。
The topic of discussion for today is smart cities in India. This is a very hot and happening topic in China as well. There are many cities such as Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, etc., which are a part of the smart city program there in China.
大家知道的，阿里巴巴是购物智慧平台，类似这样的智慧平台在中国很多很多，人们的衣食住行都有这样的平台。
Everyone knows about the Alibaba platform. In fact, there are many such platforms prevalent in China, and we need it in our daily lives every day.
大家也了解中国的微信、北斗导航系统、百度搜索软件以及一些打车的软件，都在提供智慧服务。
And as everyone knows, there are other softwares in China as well. For example, Baidu, and there are many taxi equipments as well, taxi apps as well. These equipments and these apps form a very important part of day-to-day life.
现在在中国，出门不用带现金，吃饭不用下厨房，购物不用去商店，乘车、 可以挑选车辆，非常方便。
Right now in China, if you want to go out and purchase something, you don't need to carry your wallet. If you want to eat something, you don't need to move out of your house. And if you want to go somewhere, if you want to get a cab, you don't need to get your hand out and stop a car. Everything is very convenient these days.
这方面的案例很多，但是今天在这里，我主要还是想分享一下中国我们邮政快递行业的智慧化的情况。
There are many numerous examples as these which I've talked right now, but today I would mainly focus on the intelligent practice in the field of China Post services with everyone present over here.
中国国家邮政局管理中国的邮政快递行业，这些年来，中国的邮政快递行业超高速发展，日均的快递报购量达到了1.8亿件，贡献了全球60%的快递报购量。 为全中国乃至世界的生活生产提供着便利，连接着商流、物流、资金流、信息流、互联网信息化、物联网智能化，发挥了极其重要的引领和推动作用。
Over the years, China's post and express industry has developed at a very fast pace, with an average daily express package of 180 million pieces. This contributes up to 60% of the world's express parcels, facilitating the life and production of China and the world, connecting businesses, logistics, capital flow, information flow, etc. Internet informatization and intelligent Internet of Things have played an important role in leading and promoting this sector.
现在这个还是已经发展到了末端的最后1公里，成为智慧城市建设不可分割的部分。我们有一些案例。
This current situation has developed to the last mile of the terminal and has become an inseparable part of building a smart city. We have some of the vivid cases and examples that I would like to share with you.
比如说图像处理，我们中国的顺丰集团对基地的物品进行图像对比、比对识别，对手写汉字运单进行图像比对识别，大幅度降低手机安全的隐患，大幅度节约纸质运单 数单的人力，整体准确率达到了90个点以上。
The first example is that of image processing. The China Shunfeng Group or the SF Group has carried out image comparison identification on delivered items and has also carried out image comparison identification on handwritten Chinese orders. This has greatly reduced the security risks of receiving and sending wrong articles, greatly saving paper bills as well and manpower as well. And the overall accuracy rate has reached over 90%.
比如说大数据，中国顺丰集团研发了数据灯塔，全方位开发利用大数据，实现了快递全环节、全流程、全链条的数字化管控，路径优化。中国品牌快递企业都建构了干线路径优化系统。
The next example is that of the big data. Again, the China Shunfeng Group, the SF Group has developed a data beacon to develop and utilize big data in an all-round way and realize the data management and control of the whole process of the express delivery.
顺丰这些企业还聚焦末端的配送，建构了顺丰地图，指导揽收和配送路径的这个优化。
Next is an example of path optimization. The Chinese brand express delivery companies have built a trunk route optimization system. Shunfeng and other companies have also focused on the construction of a SF map, that is the Shunfeng map, to guide the collection and distribution path optimization.
再说智能仓储，中国的京东物流建设了雅就1号等全球领先的无人仓，全都是智能装备、无人化作业，机器人的拣选速度达到每小时3600次。
Next example is that of smart storage. The China's Qingdong Logistics has built the world's leading unmanned warehouses, such as Asia #1, all of which are unmanned operations of intelligent equipments. The selection speed of robots is about 3,600 times per hour.
无人分拣在中国邮政快递行业正在迅速推广，估计5年之内能够普及整个行业，可以实现白天无人操作，夜晚无灯化操作。
Next is unmanned sorting. The China Post Express enterprise is applying and promoting it. It is estimated that it can be popularized within the next 5 years. It can realize services without any light and also night production, and without any person operating during the day.
中国的这个行业当中的无人机、无人车正在的形成应用的热潮，广泛应用于边远地区、农村和城市的园区。中国的旋风还研发出了全球首款的大型货运无人机 IT 200。
Next is drones and unmanned vehicles. The development of drones and unmanned vehicles in China's postal and express industry has forced a boom and is being widely used into the remote areas and rural areas and in the urban parks as well. The China Shunfeng SF has also developed the world's first large-scale cargo drone that is called AT-200.
这样的案例很多很多，中国这一切都在进步发展之中。
There are many such examples, there are many number, and everything such related things are progressing in China at a very rapid pace.
我最后想与大家分享的是，中国邮件快递行业的智能化发展是中国科技发展的必然，是政产学研用合力共为的结果，是推动中国邮件快递行业从现在的做大走向未来做强的根本。
The last thing that I want to share with you is that the intelligent development of China's post and express industry is the inevitable development of China's science and technology. It is a collective result of the joint efforts of the government, industry, research and development bodies, and is the fundamental entity to promote China's post and express industry to become better and stronger in the future.
我们愿与全球同事一道，拥抱数字化、智慧化。在邮件快递行业实现物联网、大数据、人工智能等技术的有机结合，为世界邮件快递行业和全人类智能化时代贡献中国智慧、中国方案、中国力量。
We are willing to work with our colleagues and friends of all around the world to embrace digitalization and realize the organic combination of Internet of Things, big data, artificial intelligence, and other technologies in the post and express industry. We want to contribute to China's wisdom, China's solution, China's power to the world post and express industry, and the era of all human intelligization.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Zeng. The next speaker is Mr. Paavo Moilanen, smart mobility expert Ramboll. Paavo Moilanen leads the development of the digital mobility lab in Ramboll, a leading engineering design and consultancy company founded in Denmark in 1945. Digital Mobility Lab specializes in digitization of transport systems and smart mobility. Paavo has a long track record in transport system plans, transport pricing issues, transport modeling studies, CBA assessments, urban, regional, and transport strategic plans and national infrastructure projects and plans. He also has substantial experience in international transport and land use research and consulting and coordinating large consortia in the EU framework research programs. Previously, he has worked for LT Consultants Limited, Finland, now a part of the WSP Group, as head of research and development. Martial and Partners, Cambridge, UK, also part of WSP now, and Government Institute for Economic Research in Finland, VATT. Paavo also works as Chief Technology Officer in the Kiti Group in Helsinki in Finland. Paavo.
Thank you. When we talk about shared and connected mobility, to me it really means digitalization and data, sort of being very interested about transport and how transport works and how it's connected to the land use and how cities are functioning. So that's why we as researchers sort of 3 years ago set up our own startup called Gode, which means ride in Finnish, and we started creating a MaaS platform. And this MaaS is, I guess, a lot of people know what it is. It's mobility as a service, and the term was sort of invented in Finland, largely due to the sort of deregulation process of Finland, and where we wanted to start reducing car usage by making all the other transport modes so easy to use that you would actually not need to have your own car, or at least to take rid of your second car, which is becoming a norm. So and the idea of digitalization and creating platforms and which can then connect all the services that we were talking about here already, like the EV charging stations, shared rides, public transport, shared bikes, everything, is that when people use the app to select the service that he likes, he's actually a wonderful item of research. He tells, or she tells, sort of what does he like about, why does he choose the mode of transport that she chooses. So we can start gathering information, of course, respecting the privacy and other issues. And by having this big data of people actually making the choices every day and every second, so we can start analyzing the data and then doing all sorts of analytical techniques like deep learning, machine learning, and then creating a model of yourself and then using that model to make things easier for you and better for you, so that we can estimate that what would you do next time when you are in transport, and then being intelligent, sort of helping you. But of course, then when the platforms or the operational systems like taxi, like Uber it's a digitalized system, then you start collecting information about how operations work. So in addition to the demand data, you will get the sort of supply data and operational data, and you can start thinking of sort of what would make a better service, and how would you make people, for example, share more. And these are the sort of new kind of things that you can do with digitalization and data. What we have traditionally done in the past is to guide governments to make better policy about what is a good transport system. So with this new digitalization, we will get much more new data and much more information about how people move, what people like, and how you should develop the operational systems. So we can make a better policy then. So that's how I see the shared mobility for me.
Thank you, Paavo. The next speaker is Gerald Ollivier, Lead Transport Specialist at the World Bank. Gerald Ollivier is one of the 2 lead specialists for the World Bank in India. He focuses on developing solutions to enhance urban mobility, achieve sustainable economic integration through multimodal transport, enhance connectivity, and achieve safer transport to better serve the needs of India. He leads the bank's community of practice on transit-oriented development. Prior to India, he was cluster leader in the Singapore World Bank Hub. From 2010 to 2018, he supported the development of metro lines and high-speed rail lines in China as a team leader for the World Bank. From 1995 to 2010, he focused on World Bank trade and transport projects in Europe and Central Asia. He's a civil engineer and a chartered financial analyst.
Thank you very much, Mr. Behl. Ladies and gentlemen, pleasure to be with you this morning. I would like to start by asking you a question. How many of you this morning use shared mobility to come to this place? Please raise your hand. Wow, that's actually a pretty impressive ratio. I wanted to ask this question because globally, there was a recent article from Bloomberg New Energy Finance that came out saying that right now about 5% of vehicle kilometers are using shared mobility, and by 2040 they expect to see something like 40%. So that's not for India, but globally. And you can see already this room where, obviously it's a one-off trip to a remote location, not your daily commute, but you can see how it's changing the way people are moving around. Now, as the World Bank, we look at India and we think about where India wants to be in 2030 and what it needs to do in order to do so. Now, what is absolutely fascinating is to see a double change in the population in cities. We are going to have 590 million people in cities by 2030, but also change in the expectation of people. And with that, a wide variety of expectation. Different income groups expecting different type of service, different price point, and we see it already in the different ride-sharing options where you can choose different quality of service for your rides. Now, the big transformation that comes with connectivity and digital connectivity in particular is that we are now able to trace at a very micro level what patterns of different individuals, income groups related, sub-area of a city related look like. And when taking those elements together, I mean, these are examples in Sao Paulo and Dar es Salaam, we can start looking at how the city is performing as a system in terms of overall accessibility to job, hospital, education, and the like. So it's a game changer in terms of the overall planning for the cities that really is transforming the way we can address the question of how to get to where India wants to be by 2030. Now, when looking at when looking at hyperconnectivity, what allows all of this transformation is the new data flows that allows us to have a very discrete understanding of what each users need. But it's really the combination of this together with shared mobility, electric mobility, and maybe later on in the context of India, automation, that is going to transform the way people move around. Now, there is a risk when you look at those different elements that it's not going to yield the kind of benefit one expects. Why? Because shared electric and essentially autonomous mobility will lead to a reduction in cost, will lead to more trips, will lead to people feeling more comfortable living far, far away from the city because they can relax in the car while driving long distance. And if, as a collective, the society does that, then the system will not work. However, with proper coordination, leveraging on the shared mobility options, leveraging on the data that you're getting now from the platform, you can actually reduce the trips. You can consolidate trips into fewer vehicles at peak hours because that's really where the constraints are. You can optimize the vehicle configuration to reduce fuel consumption. You can reduce the parking space that is being wasted in cities today. So there is an opportunity to take those opportunities, to take those transformations and convert them into a true game changer for India. But it really depends on the policies, the infrastructure being put in place. There have been quite a few discussions, including last year with Niti Aayog, thinking about how shared mobility integrates within the systems. But what is really critical to fairly rapidly come up with as a vision is the complementarity between shared mobility and what one could call the traditional shared mobility, the public transport, be it bus-based or metro-based or suburban rail-based. So how does shared mobility extend the range of these solutions? How shared mobility can offer a differentiated service level, and we'll hear from Shuttle just afterwards, which will illustrate, how you can have maybe different price point, different quality of service, and that's in and of itself meeting the needs of diverse, income groups in the country. From a policy perspective, there is also a need to look at what is scarce within your cities, right? Space is a scarcest part of urban mobility, and that's why you have congestion. So how do you price the use of urban space in a way that reflects that scarcity? How do you optimize traffic management within the city using the connection between rolling stock, infrastructure, traffic management system, where we know that you can get easily 20, 30% increase in speed if those have been optimized leveraging on IoT. Careful need to look at the management of data in two respects. One, to make sure that the data is used in ways that can allow better planning, better operation for the city, not only for the individual operators, but also management of data and systems in a way that ensures their resilience to cyber attack. As everything gets fully connected, then you become more vulnerable to those attacks, and that can impact the system, that can impact individual freedom. I will then show you a few examples of how does it translate in reality. This is an example from the city of Beijing. This is a broader Beijing area, and the yellow highlight show areas that are not covered by public transit today or not accessible for the population. Then, as you may know, in China, there has been a very big push for dockless bike sharing system, privately funded. And what we have analyzed is what is the impact of really combining those last mile connectivity options with public transport. And you can see the orange areas that show the increase in public transport accessibility that come from a combination of, ride sharing with public bicycle and public transport. And the picture on the right shows you how the overall accessibility has been transformed. So very important from a policy perspective that the combination of all of these elements can be transforming the way your city performs. Now, another example from Tianjin. Sorry, I take example from China because that's where I was recently and that's where I've worked very much in details. But this is the case of Tianjin, where we looked at improving walkability, bikeability around 109 metro stations. And we looked at essentially the flows that exist within the city. So using artificial intelligence, the quality of the streetscape was mapped out to understand where people can easily bike within the city. Then the data from GPS, from Mobike, one of the provider of public bike sharing system, was mapped out on the right side. So you can see the temporal use of a network. And out of this, a bike score and walk score could be established throughout the city. Areas where you have gaps within the network can be established. And as a result, the city is able to prioritize on where the gaps are using big data. So very fundamental use of shared mobility as a way to inform where to prioritize investment for the city. One thing that, relates to the two scenarios I was presenting at the beginning is that we have to be careful that if everybody ends up taking an Uber in the morning, the cities are not going to work. It's not Uber, it's Ola, it's all. What I mean is single occupancy vehicle with a driver. That just is not going to work in Indian city. We did the calculation for, together with OECD last year, of what would happen to carbon emission if we have the use of shared mobility on an active basis, but using regular vehicle versus shuttle type of vehicle. And what we find is that if you were to have a lot of shared mobility with single cars, you would have an increase actually in carbon emission by 2030. If you, however, focus on high occupancy vehicles like minibuses, etc., you will see a substantial reduction in carbon emissions. So from a policy perspective, very important to see the combination of all of these elements to address your objective. Now, there is a fascinating opportunity that comes with shared mobility. Transition to electric vehicle really comes from vehicles that are driving at least 150 kilometers a day, and shared mobility is typically in that range. So it provides a very good opportunity to work with fleets and create models like were mentioned by Mr. Das and Mr. Balakrishna before, to create really platforms that are going to be sustained with clients that are the natural client that meet the value proposition that Ms. Maan was presenting. So those are the obvious ones, the initial charging facilities, and they can develop business models that work much better than individual car owners. I plug in this because this is a slide a colleague of mine, a former colleague of mine who has moved from the World Bank to Didi was sharing. Didi is processing Didi is the equivalent of Uber in China. And they are processing every day 4,800 terabytes of data to optimize their system and the response to customer requests they get for routing for car, shared car, buses, etc. When you think about that magnitude compared to, let's say, what a STU would do in India, where you get your monthly report and once a month you kind of decide, oh, overall we are operating better or worse than the previous month. the level of precision you can have in matching the needs of a customer is what the game changer is about, is where the platforms on artificial intelligence and the like can run and really get you the most out of your investment. So let me conclude with a few policy considerations. It's very clear to us that shared vehicle, in particular shared electric vehicle, represent a major opportunity in the mobility of tomorrow and can be turned into a true instrument for meeting the policy objective of a city. That's very, very clear. But the system needs to be planned as a system with complementarity in mind, with differentiated service in mind, with the full range, because you have many different needs in the cities. One area of opportunity is to bring the efficiencies that come from data analytics to the conventional bus operator and metro operators. Help them figure out why their network is not rightly aligned with the demand today, because many of them have not changed their network in 10 years and the cities are totally different from 10 years ago. So a real big opportunity here to match the knowledge and the platform, the data scientists that run into those companies with the more conventional delivery of service. There is going to be a need to regulate data availability and security and make sure that the price reflects the scarcity of land within city. And that's true not only of shared users, it's true of all users. You need a push and pull approach to ensure that mobility works in city. I would just last mention that for this to work, you need the policies, you need the regulation that allows people to do it honestly. And that means that the regulation need to allow you to operate properly those services so that you can go to the financial market, secure money in good terms. And that means a lot of continuous reinvention of the regulatory framework. A Motor Vehicle Act dated in 1988 is most likely not including the provision it needs for shared mobility. So how do you embed this into the regulatory framework to achieve the transformation you need is going to be fundamental. And last but not least, once you have done that, the urban space need to be optimized to match that need for urban mobility. Where do people stop to wait for their taxis or their shared mobility option? Do you have concentration points and the like? So just a few thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ollivier. The next and final speaker for this session is Mr. Vishwas Singh, Head Policy Advocacy Shuttle. Vishwas Singh has over 10 years of experience in managing operations, product and solutions designing, enhancing customer experience, and is currently the Vice President, Policy and Advocacy for Shuttle. Since 2015, he's been associated with Shuttle and firmly believes that a technology-enabled shared mobility solution like Shuttle app-based bus service is a win-win situation for both Indian cities and citizens who want a hassle-free commute while making a travel choice that also reduces congestion and pollution. He's been working closely with government and research organizations to drive the adoption of shared mobility solutions like Shuttle across India. Before joining Shuttle, Vishwas had various roles across the payments, e-commerce, and intellectual property industries. Mr. Singh is an engineering graduate from IIT Kanpur, India's premier engineering institute. He's an active speaker and participates in many industry and government forums.
Thank you for the kind introduction and for this opportunity to be part of such an enriching discussion. I'm from Shuttle. It's a technology-enabled seat-based urban mobility solution. We primarily operate buses, and our outlook about mobility has evolved since we started in April 2015. This is roughly 4.5 years. So, we see mobility in multiple ways. We understand that there are two primary categories that can be kind of drawn, distinguishing a structured mobility versus a ad hoc mobility. If I understand from a citizen's perspective, I may need to go somewhere today and at a different place tomorrow. This is your on-demand ad hoc mobility. If I look at other distinction of mobility, which is basically a structured mobility, I have to go to same place every day and more or less at a similar time, typically office commute. school commute, those kind of mobility can be categorized under a structured mobility space. And this key distinction has been the core of our model. That if you know that there is a pattern to mobility and that segment of mobility is huge, structured mobility typically comprises around, contributes for 40 to 45% of overall mobility happening in urban space. And the core of it is that if you know the pattern, it is possible to design and optimize. And what is the objective, what should be the ideal objective of design and optimization? Is that how can I serve maximum number of passenger kilometers with minimum number of vehicle kilometers? And if you put this constraint and this objective, some obvious answers will start emerging from it. Can I move people in more efficient way? Can I use a bigger vehicle? Can I pool people? If there is a vehicle that is lying idle, can I use that vehicle to serve someone who wants to move when the vehicle is not actually serving anyone? So these are common themes that that emerge if we just stick to that fundamental objective that we want to serve more passenger kilometers with minimum number of vehicle kilometers. And that has been the core. What we realized is that with buses in structured mobility space, if we operate at a very high occupancy of, let's say, 90% or beyond, the kind of efficiencies we achieve with respect to CO2 emission, with respect to space that is taken to move those people, and with respect to fuel consumption that actually happens, we have seen that there is a factor of around 7 to 8 times. So buses happen to be, if operated at right occupancy, they happen to be 7 to 8 times space efficient, carbon efficient, and fuel efficient at the same time. At current scale, and this is something that we have played it out on the ground and seen the data around it. At our current scale of 75,000 rides a day, we are taking around 17,000 cars off the road, which is equivalent to saving 60 tons of CO2 every day, saving 37 kiloliters of fuel every day, and kind of, freeing up 2 lakh square meters of road space and equivalent parking space. I think that is huge. Our fundamental belief is that if we move towards efficient modes of commute, it is possible to halve the levels of cities' pollution and congestion. So this is more about our understanding and our philosophy of doing things. I'll briefly touch upon our core areas of interest with respect to shared mobility. Asset utilization is one area that I have been very vocal about, and I'm very happy to see that recently there has been attempt by government and administration also to kind of encourage it. So while it was not talked about in this session so far, I thought I'll touch upon it. So Ministry of Road Transport and Highways has come up with attempt to kind of liberalize the permits where multiple assets which have different kinds of permit can be cross-utilized. So I was talking about previously about the example when an asset is lying idle, it cannot be used for some other kind of mobility. If you liberalize the permit, it becomes eligible to be used for other form of transport. One simple example could be a tourist vehicle, which is typically given a permit which can only serve tourist mobility. But what if when tourist is not there? Tourists, they have seasons. And if that vehicle is idle, is it fair to leave that asset either in the parking or not earning or not serving any mobility, and let another vehicle be purchased to serve a, let's say, intra-city mobility or office commute? It's not fair. If that bus, that car, which is supposed to serve transport for tourists is available, why not use it at to serve intra-city mobility when the demand at that side is not there? So it basically requires liberalization of permit, which enables the cross-utilization of assets. That's one. Another, very fundamental thing that is happening is Uber and Ola have been in India for almost close to a decade. And now there has been a realization by the government that these models are actually adding value to citizens. They are adding value to cities. And hence, this crusade of probably 10 years has led to a strong realization that aggregator is a model. This is the way forward. Shared mobility is the way forward. And there has been an attempt to kind of recognize them under Motor Vehicles Act. There is an amendment that was initiated in the parliament, but that bill will lapse, but because the same government is coming, probably we hope that it will get taken up. So that is a big recognition and big change from the traditional understanding of transportation and mobility within cities. Another important aspect about mobility and the emerging models is safety, and I believe it has been talked about a little, but I'll share my perspective on that. I believe if you know all times which vehicles are on the road, which relates to one of the points talked about earlier about vehicle identity. If you know which vehicles were on the road at all times, where they are, their location at all times, and who is driving them at all times, as well as who is traveling in them, then safety is solved for. The concerns of safety, I'm not talking about road accidents, that's a different area. I'm talking about incidents that happen between passengers, driver passengers and those kind of incidents. I think if it becomes certain that everything is tracked, then the fear of getting caught itself will deter the possibilities of crime. So I'm a firm believer that it is not the quantum of punishment or severity of punishment that deters crime. It is the certainty that deters crime, and to be certain, to be able to punish someone for an offense, it is important to be able to track who did it. And hence, safety, a major portion of it is going to be contributed by being able to know all vehicles, all passengers, all drivers at all times. I think third point that I would want to touch upon is about ability to be able to shift people from less efficient modes to more efficient modes. It requires a very thorough understanding of citizens, of demography, of demand patterns, of paying capability, of segments within the society, which means basically different people need different kind of vehicles, different kind of commute comfort, and according to that, offering or enabling these models that are emerging to be able to serve different segments to the satisfaction of their comfort. And then obviously with respect to policies and incentives, with respect to tax, it is possible to encourage models which are more efficient and will have a long-term impact on cities' pollution and congestion. So while EVs are talked about a lot, I'm pro-EV. We have two EVs buses which are operating on our platform. It will take some time to kind of, the adoption to happen. But EVs are not going to solve for congestion. And congestion has to be solved by understanding the mobility demand well, the way we talked about the structured versus ad hoc, or maybe other models are also possible, last mile integrated multimodal solutions. So if I reflect back on these 3 points, asset utilization is one primary pillar on which mobility can move forward, followed by the safety. There has to be a central guideline, a level playing field between all the players. Safety for every citizen is almost equal. It cannot be that a person commuting in one mode of transport has to be more safer as compared to other. And lastly, the ability to create a change in people's mobility pattern and realization that their shift is creating a contribution towards a city environment, and people should be able to take pride in that in one way or the other. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishwas. It's 11:40, so we've run out of time in the session. We started 10 minutes late. But I think if we can do Q&A on an individual basis with the speakers after the session, then we can start the next session on time. So we'll keep Q&A to the tea coffee session afterwards. Thank you to the ladies and gentlemen on the panel, and thank you to all of you folks. If I can request you to just give me a couple of minutes more, we're going to present the speakers with a token of appreciation from the side of the organizers. I think it's been a very interesting panel discussion. Obviously, there's a lot of work yet to be done. There's sort of policy on one side which needs to be sensible in catering to the needs of the users and creating an environment which creates convenience for the users and also creates an environment which allows businesses to build a good business case at the other end, and that's the only way it works. But thank you once again, and if I can have the mementos, please.
Thank you, speakers, for your invaluable time and inputs. Now, Mr. Dhruv Behl will hand over the token of appreciation. We'll start with Mr. Sidharth Balakrishnan. Mr. Arnab Das. Ms. Avantika Gode. Ms. Bharti Maan. Mr. Paavo Moilanen. Sorry, sir. Mr. Gerald Ollivier. Mr. Vishwas Singh. And Mr. Zeng. Can we have a group picture here, please?